So growing up, I had the same beliefs as other kids, right? You wish upon stars, you don't step on the cracks because you don't want to break your mom's back. Even the cleanest cut boy could give you a bad case of the cooties if you're not careful. You know, normal stuff. But I also had some unusual beliefs thanks to my unusual mom. She would read me stories or sometimes make them up at night, which was great. But the thing was, she would extract weird morals from them, right? So after this one section of Alice in Wonderland, she said, "That's why you never want to cry too long, because you don't want to drown in a river of your own tears." Like, cleverly leaving out the part about, well, you know, she had gone to a magical land where she ate something that made her a giant, and that's when she cried, and that's why when she shrunk back down again, she almost drowned in the river. You know, she saw that as just getting overly bogged down in technicalities. So she also was a feminist who was very empowered, and so every now and then, you know, for example, she'd say something like this. She'd be driving me somewhere, and she'd come to a red light, and she'd turn and say, you know, "I'm really running late. Could you change that light to green for me? Could you just use your powers, change your light to green?" And so I'd just concentrate really hard. And the thing was, I mean, sometimes it took longer than other, but it always turned green. So it was exciting to think that I had these powers, and who knew what other powers I might discover later. And then, you know, but also she was a self-preservationist. She had friends who had older kids who complained about how much their daughters were on the phone. And she knew that I was terrified of the dentist, so she played it like this. She said, "The phones are actually cavity scanning devices. And when the phone rings and you pick up innocently saying hello, this clever machine will make up anything to get you talking. They might pretend to be a friend of yours. And while you're talking, they'll be scanning your mouth for cavities. And if they find any, they'll automatically schedule an appointment for you. You'll be brought in the next day, and you'll have your cavities drilled." So when the phone would ring, I would run and scream for years. So, but I got my most unusual belief, perhaps, from my father with a little assist from my mom. And that was, I'll never forget the first time he said it. My mother was giving me a hard time over not making my bed. And I was explaining, but I'm just going to get in it tonight and mess it up again, so it doesn't make any sense. And she did one of these exasperated, "You see what I put up with," to my father. And my father piped in with, "That's what you get for buying her from the gypsies." And see, the thing was, though, my mom didn't laugh like it was a joke. She just gave him this dirty look, you know, like the way you would, as if to say, "Oh, you're going to throw that reality in my face right now?" She didn't appreciate it. So it was a combination of him being matter-of-fact about it and her being annoyed that made me convinced that I was indeed bought from gypsies. And the thing was, that was kind of crazy about it was, like, I looked a lot like my little brother, and we both looked a lot like my parents. I mean, we all have blue eyes. We're all kind of fair-skinned. We burn in the sun. And I started doing research on gypsies because I thought I ought to know a little bit in case they came back. And the thing was, like, all the pictures, they were, like, dark-haired and swarthy, you know, clearly didn't burn in the sun. And, but that didn't faze me because, you know, I just thought, well, that's a stereotype. You know, there's all kinds. You can find blue-eyed Spanish people, you know, like. So I was just convinced that there was some fair-skinned gypsy family out there that could come back. See, the other thing is in the reading, it was clear there's not a lot of reading you can find. This is before the internet, you know, on gypsies. But I went to the regular library, my school library. I checked out everything I could. And one thing that was clear is that when people would say, "Oh, I got gypped," that was actually insulting to my people. And I didn't want to tell people that they were my people. Because, you know, just because my parents kind of accidentally mention it in this moment of like buyer's remorse kind of, you know, they clearly weren't out there advertising it, so I figured I should honor that and not be telling their secrets. But at the same time, I would just say, if a classmate said they got gypped because this thing broke or whatever, I would say, "Hey, you know, you shouldn't say that word. It's a bad word." And but anyhow, I I kind of got the hint from the reading that people were very mistrustful of gypsies, and they were known often for being charlatans and for gypping people, and you know, this whole thing. And so it occurred to me that even though my parents never threatened to like take me back, to return me, it occurred to me that they might show up years later after like the hard child raising was done and snatch me back when I was profitable. And so, again, I would go with them, even though I would miss my family, but, you know, I didn't want my parents to get the short end of the stick, so I figured I would just, you know, when I started working and making money, I would send the money kind of anonymously. And so, you know, it puts a lot of pressure on a kid when you think, and my brother clearly not bought from the gypsies, so he had it easy, you know, but I had this pressure, like you have to perform and make it worth the price of purchase, and I was too scared to ask them how much that was. So it went like this, and my favorite book that I found ever from the library, which I checked out all the time and read multiple times, was Gypsy Folklore. And there were all these stories, you know, they not only believed in death as a character, but also Satan. And they didn't have the same kind of like looking down upon Satan as the Bible did. I mean, they kind of looked at, he was like smart and crafty, fallen angel, so I think they kind of thought, you know, he was all right. And they had some stories too about like how some of their, you know, fellow gypsy people had cheated death. And and usually it was this great thing. And this one guy cheated death who lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, and he was kind of like their own little mini god. But there was this other guy who was really sick, and he cheated death. And then he was miserable because death wouldn't come, and he finally had to beg for death to come. You know, so this is some deep stuff I'm taking in. My people are deep. And one of these days, when I'm reading the Gypsy Folklore book, I tell my mother, I say, do you know that the gypsies believe that if you sneeze and no one says God bless you, that the devil can enter your soul? So it's really important. Because I had hay fever, something serious, which, looking back, like probably real gypsies don't get hay fever because they're outside a lot, so that's probably not a genetic thing, but I didn't think about that. And so I just wanted to make sure she knew to bless me every time I sneeze. And she looked at me kind of funny, and she said, wow, you really read that book a lot. You read it like some people read the Bible. And I said, yeah, you know, I want to be ready, you know, in case the gypsies come back for me. And my mom got this really funny look on her face. And then it clicked, and she was like, oh, no, honey, your father was joking. That's his weird idea of a joke. We didn't actually buy you from the gypsies. And she proceeded to tell me about the morning I was born, and how long I took and what I weighed, which was 6 pounds, 6 ounces, born at 6:06 a.m. So she told me if they were superstitious people, they would have just sent me back. But they weren't. And then after all that, and I felt so much better, it was like this huge weight off my shoulders, she said, and anyhow, even if we had bought you from the gypsies, we wouldn't let them come and get you. We'd keep you as one of our own. And I thought, why would she say that? Even if we had. So she was reopening the possibility that maybe they had bought me. And then all of a sudden, I sneezed. She said, God bless you. She winked and walked off, leaving me to forever wonder.